Major funding for this program is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Murray Hill Properties, Bank of America, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from Arbor Realty Trust, BRT Realty Trust, BERDON LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, MUSS Development LLC, NEWMARK Knight Frank, PALIN Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Studley, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, Extreme Contracting and Deconstruction.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. Everybody wants to live, work, shop, do everything in Tribeca, Hudson Square, which I never knew what Hudson Square was, the West Village. And today I have the people who are doing everything in that neighborhood, who own the properties, who are converting it, building hotels. Carl Weisbrod, president of Trinity Real Estate. Elliot Ingerman, principal at Tribeca Associates, and last but definitely not least, Bill Rudin, president of Rudin Management Company. Carl, you got lucky this year, right?
I got very lucky.
You got very lucky. What happened this year? You had a place that more office space was leased this year in your properties and near Bill's properties than anywhere else in the city. What happened?
Well, I think we have to look at several things. First of all, New York is booming. New York is a place that everyone wants to be, and for good reason. The fundamentals of New York are terrific. Second, we made a decision at Trinity Real Estate and Hudson Square, and I think it's a decision that all of us here today have made collectively to try to attract creative tenants that are the future of New York City's economy, and I think actually the future of the American economy, the people who add intellectual value to products, to ideas, and those are the tenants we sought to attract. And third, we're seeing a very strong tightening of the market, and people are looking for new places, places that are genuine New York neighborhoods where one can live, one can work, and one can enjoy themselves. And I think the common thread among these three neighborhoods are those factors.
And what happened, Bill?
Well, I was going to say the other component was economic value. That our price point for the product that we're all delivering to our commercial tenants is substantially lower than Midtown and even lower than downtown. And I think that's a big point.
Why was it lower than Midtown? We all understand, but why was it lower than downtown? I mean, downtown. I mean, Carl and Bill, you own buildings in downtown. Why was this area fortunately at a lower price point?
Well, I think in the last 18 months, the flight to quality of Class A space, the vacancy rate in Lower Manhattan has gone down. We've all worked on downtown, and it's a whole other show, but there isn't a lot of vacant Class A space. So companies who wanted to be downtown, I think, realized that they didn't have to go all the way downtown. They could come to these type of neighborhoods, whether it's Tribeca or Hudson Square, and find what Carl talked about before, the high-ceilinged, open floor plan within the space to have the creative ambiance that these companies are looking for. We sat for a couple of years with 300,000 feet vacant.
Right, you bought 32 Avenue of the Americas in 1999.
Right.
And as you said, you sat with how many square feet?
Well, in 1999, we then converted it to, we took AT&T, who owned the building, they moved to the base of the building, 400,000 feet. And then we created a telecom hotel model that was very hot at that time, where data switching, communication was the rage, and we rented to MCI, Quest, Global Crossing. A lot of these companies have gone out of business. So we rode that boom up, hit a wall in 2002, watched it go down, and then we repositioned the building to attract the creative tenants that Carl was talking about. And it took a couple of years as the Midtown market got stronger for companies to realize that this is where a good alternative in terms of the price point, transportation, restaurants, hotels was a viable alternative for them. And then once we attracted our first office tenant, which was RAI, which is an Italian television network, who was facing renewal on $60 or $65 a foot in Midtown. In the mid-30s, they could come down and created this incredible studio space for themselves. Then we got BBH, which is a British advertising agency. We got Cambridge University Press, a British advertising agency. And then we got Globo, which is a Brazilian TV network. So it's all these creative type of companies who are international. And Carl mentioned that companies are coming here. They've all expanded. They found the right space for their companies, and they love it being downtown. So you know, it's a combination of patience, having the right product, and providing the right type of service.
Right. Now, Elliott is doing something with Carl as the landlord over here at 330 Hudson Street. You're taking a former warehouse, a building that served as a warehouse, that you said was vacant for how many years?
7 years.
7 years. And now you're doing what?
We're going to be keeping the existing building and adding to it. We're going to be creating 292,000 feet, which is 10 stories of office space, and then 10 more stories on top for a hotel. And this was really spearheaded by Carl, who felt that there needed to be more of a 24-hour community, a vibrant kind of area within Hudson Square, which would help out all of the office space. So really, they were the ones who spearheaded this to say, we want a hotel in the neighborhood. We're building a hotel down in Tribeca. We started discussions, then we were able to come to agreement to move forward on the project. So I think we all think that it will benefit the entire neighborhood of Hudson Square.
And for my viewers, okay, Carl was talking and Bill was talking about tenants moving in the 30s and $40 a square foot today in Hudson Square.
Well, not so much anymore. I think we're seeing rents well above. A tenant who got a deal for $30 or $40 a square foot 6 months ago, 8 months ago, or a year ago couldn't get that deal today. Its prices have really moved up, and I should say that one of the things that Elliott's going to be doing and Tribeca Associates is providing what is in essence a very different kind of a commercial product in Hudson Square, which is really true Class A space. Mm-hmm. Most of the space that we have and that exists in the neighborhood or exists in Tribeca or exists in the village is really B+ space in the classic sense, and I think that there'll be a very unique product here which will also be very appealing.
And will attract probably the type of tendency that Bill and you were just talking about. A lot of the media and the creative type of people are what you're really thinking of.
I think that that's what we all are seeing as the growth of New York and the United States. You know, so much what's being exported overseas, not in the way of jobs, is not just, as we know, manufacturing jobs. It's also routinized commercial and clerical jobs, and what the real value added of American jobs are these intellectual, creative, new ways of thinking where New York is really particularly well situated, and I think where these neighborhoods, which really have a creative edge to them, are particularly well suited to appeal, nurture, and help grow these companies. And I think that's why they're coming there.
I think it's also interesting, Carl said something, we were sitting backstage, that a lot of these companies have come into the neighborhood possibly because of lower prices. So it's been cheaper than Midtown. It's been cheaper than downtown. But once they get into the neighborhood and they stay there, they enjoy it so much that even if the prices Midtown were to go cheaper, they're not going to leave. They really become big cheerleaders of the community, and they become cheerleaders of the entire neighborhood. And what they want to stay there, and I think people who work within the companies are very happy there. They enjoy the vibrancy of Soho. They enjoy the restaurants, the retail. They enjoy that it's a little bit quieter than some of the Midtown neighborhoods. And I think that they, really benefit from that neighborhood.
Well, it's also, I think, a marketing tool for their companies. It's
Yes,
a recruitment
to get
tool.
people, no question
You
about it.
walk into Bartle Bogle and Hegarty's space at 32 6th Avenue,
Right.
and you cannot believe you just feel the energy when you walk in there, and it's so creative and it's beautiful with the exposed ceilings and the light coming in. It really changes the whole dynamics for these companies, and they're thrilled to be in this type of space.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we'll see, and we are seeing in these neighborhoods, one of the things we saw downtown is that while tenants may initially be attracted because of price, the goal in these neighborhoods, in all of these neighborhoods, is to make the neighborhood something that's very appealing, irrespective of price point. And that I think we're seeing that happening downtown now. Who would have thought that 6 years after September 11th and the tragic events of that day, that we would see such a remarkable recovery downtown and tenants coming on there and growing on issues irrespective of price. And we're seeing the same thing in these neighborhoods.
Now you live and work there, which is interesting.
In
And we were
Tribeca.
talking about that before. So
Correct.
let's talk about someone, we don't live and work over there. I live and work in Midtown, but that's a different case.
Right. Well, I think that there is a difference between Hudson Square and Tribeca, and I think Carl pointed that out as well.
For my audience,
Sure.
Let's go geographically. What is Hudson Square and what is Tribeca?
Hudson Square is really above Canal Street, and Tribeca is the triangle below Canal Street. Hudson Square is more of a commercial neighborhood. I think there's been pockets of residential that have bloomed on this Spring Street area, and then up north past Charlton and past Houston Street. But in between is mostly commercial buildings owned by Trinity. Tribeca, on the other hand, as we've discussed, is really a residential neighborhood. There's 3 or 4 buildings that really have commercial type tenants: 32 A of A, 200, 205 Hudson, and now 99 Hudson. So it's really a different community. It's very low scale. There's a landmark district there. And I think that, because the buildings are 6 and 8 stories, most of the people get very big spaces with a lot of light and air. There's a nice community down there, and people who live there enjoy living there. Everyone at the park. All the kids know each other. My parents will take my children when we're out of town. They'll go to the park. They know everyone. And it becomes a very nice environment to live within. We work and live down there, so we're almost like residential dentists, suburban dentists who kind of walk around the streets and everyone knows us and all the kids say hi. It's a totally different type of environment. And to live in New York City and feel like you live in a small little community is just something unheard of.
Well, what about the retail? I hear office, I hear about residential, but when you have a residential and an office, you need retail. What's happening in the neighborhood retail-wise?
I think one of the profound lessons of the revitalization of Lower Manhattan is that for retail to flourish, restaurants and retail to flourish, you really need a mixed-use community of commercial and residential. We have today, with all the revitalization that's going on in Lower Manhattan today, fewer workers in Lower Manhattan than we had immediately before September 11th. We have some more residents in Lower Manhattan.
10,000 more
10,000 more residents, more than 10,000 fewer commercial workers. But we are seeing a growth of retail in Lower Manhattan that was unimaginable before September
Lower
11th.
Manhattan, I'm not disagreeing.
But
I want to get to your
The
neighborhood.
point, I think,
We spoke about Lower Manhattan last week.
The point I'm trying to make is that what is happening in Hudson Square is that as we get more residents, and I think more residents are crucial to Hudson Square's success, in addition to creative companies and their employees, the retail that is essential for a healthy neighborhood will come as the residents and creative companies both grow. And one of the reasons we were so insistent on creating a hotel in Hudson Square, and we're delighted that Tribeca Associates is going to be doing that, is because it does contribute to this 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, mixed-use neighborhood that creates a demand that retail needs around the clock.
Retailers will follow.
And that's really what we see everywhere. A restaurant can't succeed simply on lunchtime traffic. It requires an evening traffic.
But I mean, Whole Foods, which is coming into Tribeca, it's part of downtown, but it's part of Tribeca. What I see is
it's on the corners. I still consider it Lower Manhattan.
These neighborhoods, although they are all distinct, the positive thing is, and this is really happening throughout the city, and the mayor really has to be credited, is there's so much positive development and regeneration throughout the whole city. So these neighborhoods sort of interconnect with each other. Now, they're, as I said before, they're distinct, but there is a connection. And you asked me before to talk a little about our project in the village, which there again Tribeca to Hudson, Hudson Square to the West Village, and then you can then start moving up to Chelsea. And what we're working on, we think is very exciting, is with St. Vincent's, is to create really the first new hospital built in New York City, the first green hospital, as a matter of fact, which will service. You have to,
which is going to service Hudson Square,
right?
Which is going to service Tribeca, and which is going to service even the hospital, a lot of Lower Manhattan, even though there is New York Downtown Hospital.
Right, and this follows the mayor's 2030 Plan NYC, which is you need to have the right infrastructure and be environmentally friendly. And if all these residents are coming down and these companies coming down, they need proper health care, and that's the plan for building a new St. Vincent's, and then we will be developing a new residential project on the east side of the St. Vincent's complex. But the main goal right now is to get approval for the hospital and for our development. And that's going to be a very exciting project and a very important component for the future development of all of Lower Manhattan and Tribeca and Hudson Square.
When you bring out, people are working in Hudson Square and Tribeca. Very wealthy people are living. I'm not saying you're very wealthy, but the majority of the people, Tribeca is a very expensive place to live. The price of the apartments are set $1,500 to $2,500 or even more per square foot. What about the people who are working? The regular working people, the people who watch my show, who watch us on the internet, where are they living in the Hudson Square or the Tribeca neighborhood? They aren't building Independence Plazas anymore where they were able to put an affordable component. Where are these people going to be living?
I'd like to follow on one of the things that Bill said, which is the importance of the mayor's quite visionary 2030 plan, which has many, many important elements to it, including creating sustainable neighborhoods and reducing the carbon footprint in existing buildings. And one very, very important element of it is building more housing, and particularly affordable housing. Now, not all the affordable housing can be built in the most expensive neighborhoods. Some of it can, but most of it is got to be created around New York City. One of the things that these neighborhoods have is good transportation and an ability for workers throughout New York City to get to work in a expeditiously, reasonably quickly, and fortunately for all of us, most of the time the New York City subway system is the most reliable public transportation system in the world. And I think that the more we build housing in New York City, the more we're going to see all neighborhoods in New York City grow, including these neighborhoods.
But I think Lower Manhattan, with Battery Park City, with the conversions, they're not low income, but in relative terms, they're a better price point for a certain segment of the
I
economy.
think, Bill, I agree with you, but that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but
you can't buy in Lower Manhattan.
No, it's expensive.
Anything which is reasonable.
No,
today.
But it's difficult with the land costs and with construction costs. It's almost impossible without some incentives to build housing rental, to build a rental.
I mean, the week
building.
before, I had Ben McGrath of Minskoff, and basically they have
50,
about
30,
60
20.
units available in their thing, which is Lower Manhattan, Tribeca, and they had 20,000 applications for that, for those
the low income.
affordable, for the affordable portion, because one is
It's the
175,
30, 20,
okay, broken into the situation. But that's a problem, and the mayor is trying to handle it. Let's try to talk about what you're building a hotel. Apollo's building a hotel. You have a second hotel that you're building, 105 room.
100 rooms down in Tribeca, West Broadway and Chambers.
Then you have Sam Chang's hotel right in between, right, like right in the middle between the Soho Grand and the Tribeca Grand. Do you think we're going to have too many hotels in that portion of town?
Yeah, it's a question that we talk about quite a bit. And it's funny, one of our analysts said to me when we were about to build the hotel, they're going to double the amount of hotel rooms in Lower Manhattan. And that's a scary statistic. But what is that number? That's what I said back to him. What is the number? How many hotel rooms do we currently have? I think there were like 2,500. So when you look at the amount of hotel rooms that we currently have, you look at all of the residential units that are coming on the market, right? All the people that are moving down there, the businesses that are moving down there, it's clearly underserviced. You also look at all these hotels that are coming on the market. So we're building 100 rooms. De Niro has an 88-room hotel. You're doing a project with 100. I mean, we're not talking about 1,000-room hotels. We're talking about
but
small
New York
little
City,
bites.
with the exception of the new Westin, the second addition to the Westin on 44th Street and 8th Avenue, there are no large hotels being built. Maybe in the Javits Center area, fine, but otherwise you don't have.
It's
the
just not a
largest
lot.
hotel is maybe in Lower Manhattan is a 300-room Sheraton, maybe going up, or even in Tribeca, if we call that, next to the post office, that's a planned 270-room hotel.
Right. But I think that's important when you look at, and ultimately I think that there's 8,000 rooms being added, but it's over a 3-year period. So on a 70,000 total stock, it doesn't seem like that much, 2-3% per year. But time will tell. But I think when you look at just the total numbers, it doesn't seem as outrageous.
And when you look at the hotel occupancy rate in New York and the fairly steady, unbelievably high occupancy rate, and the difficulty to get a hotel room in New York, where people who are begging to be in Manhattan are taking, are filling up the Brooklyn Marriott because you can't get a hotel room in Manhattan. And given the expectations,
They call it the New York Marriott at the Brooklyn Bridge. I wouldn't want the Musses to be upset.
And it's great that they're doing it. It's fabulous for the city and Brooklyn that they're doing so well. But I think the projections on the growth in New York City tourism, the fact that people from around the world want to be here, we've been talking for the last few years about how many hotel rooms have been converted to apartments in New York, and how we've lost
that trend
hotel
is
rooms.
That trend is over right
at the
now.
moment.
At
the moment,
that trend is gone.
But with the dollar being weak and,
Right.
and the demand, the business traveler. I mean, we had lunch today with some people from out of town, and they were talking about the high expense of difficulty of getting a hotel room.
Just try to get a room during the Security Council
Yeah,
meeting.
but
there is no rooms, and the prices are outrageous.
So
Fashion Week, the security, I mean, there's always something that people are coming, even in the summertime, it's difficult to get rooms.
What about, I think I remember about a year ago, and I don't want to, it may have been a rumor, that there was a Home Depot was going to open up in Tribeca or Lower Manhattan.
We were talking to Home Depot. Home Depot's had its
so
own.
were we. We must be talking at the same
We
time.
may have been talking at the same time to the
32
same.
Avenue
We
Americas?
did. We had a conversation.
Home Depot has gone through some pretty rough times over the last.
No, but there's not
few
only
years.
Home Depot. There's Lowe's. There are others.
Yeah, I think that we're looking at a different. I think that we would have liked to have seen Home Depot come to us. It didn't happen largely because of Home Depot's own issues, but I think now we have a very different kind of a neighborhood emerging, and frankly, Home Depot is not the best kind of retail use that we
So what
would
is the
wanna
best
see
type
now.
of retail in the Tribeca, Hudson Square, neighborhood that we're talking about? Home Depot, 23rd Street is a unique store. It's not the same as they have on 59th Street. What's needed?
I don't
the
think we're-
community needs certain amenities for people who live, work.
Exactly. We're not looking for destination retail in Lower Manhattan. We're looking for very high quality retail that is going to be servicing our residents, serving our employees and our creative companies, serving the visitors and occupants of Elliott's Hotel and others in the neighborhood. I think we're looking, we have a very interesting base of creative employees, interesting residents, and interesting visitors.
So,
and that's what we want to serve.
in a certain aspect.
That's
and I'm just trying-
restaurants, that's neighborhood amenities such as high quality drugstores, food stores, and other stores that are going to be serving.
From what you're saying and
bartenders.
listening to the situation, a prime store, and I'm not a retail broker, and that's not my business, but a Trader Joe's, which is a 15,000 square foot type of store,
Like boutique
which-
supermarket.
boutique
Would be-
food
would be great for
would be
that.
great.
Yeah.
And what it did to Union Square
Yeah.
is enormous, and that's part of the character, because that can be the live, the work, and you have all these new employees who are in your buildings, and if they had that, it's like us at the Time Warner Center. That place is busy all the time. People can go shopping.
But Carl and I, can talk about trying to get retailers, down in Wall Street in Lower Manhattan, and now look today. You've got some of the world-class retailers down there, and it's changed the whole character. But it took us 10 years to get to the right level of of having the right mixture of people down there that they were convinced that they had a marketplace. And this is the same with Hudson Square and Tribeca. The retail in Tribeca, there's a lot of restaurants. That's really, I think, attracted a lot of people initially down to Tribeca, and that was really what it was. My sister moved to Tribeca 25 years ago when there was nothing there. She literally, to get up to her apartment, she had to open the window and throw the key out onto the street to get upstairs. And there was nothing there. So today there's some of the great restaurants, and when then the retailers will come as they see what we already know is there, but they will be coming down, and in 2 years or a year when the hotel's open, you'll see a totally different.
You can already see. If you look at Tribeca retail, and I think you said it well. Greenwich Street is really all the restaurants, and some on Hudson as well. And then there's some high-end boutiques, say Miyake and so on. When you look at some of the bigger retailers, so now they're locating down on Warren and Greenwich, because now they're close to the World Trade Center site, they're close to kind of the office district, and they're also close to the kind of high-end residential district. So you have Barnes & Noble, you have Whole Foods, and now across the street, someone bought these 2 retail complexes, and they're beginning to kind of trade out. And you can see a kind of a different factor. And Chambers Street is really the thoroughfare. Chambers Street is where everyone comes off of the subway, the 4, 5, and 6, the AC&E, the 1, 2, and 3, and that's where they come across. So you're seeing Chambers Street to begin to change also. A lot of the lower end retailers are beginning to change. They're putting in like a nice
No more
bagel store.
electronic stores. What's
Yeah,
happening?
They're changing, because I think it's going to the people who live in the community instead of just the people who are going back and forth.
I'll make a prediction,
And you have to make it quick, because the time is over.
We want to see more residents in Hudson Square. That's very important to drive retail. But I predict as we get more residents, Hudson Street will be one of the great retail streets in the city of New York, and that'll be in the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
We'll
I'd
come
like to
back.
thank Carl Weisbrod, Elliot Ingerman, and Bill Rudin for talking about what's happening in Hudson Square, Tribeca, the West Village. Next week, we're going to really, everybody's talking about a credit crunch. I have bank CEOs to give me their opinion of what's happening in the market. See you next week.
Major funding for this program is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Murray Hill Properties, Bank of America, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from Arbor Realty Trust, BRT Realty Trust, BERDON LLP, CB Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, MUSS Development LLC, NEWMARK Knight Frank, PALIN Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal Inc., Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Studley, Stonehenge Partners, Swig Equities, Extreme Contracting and Deconstruction.